In this video, we're going to look at how we can use OE Service Objects from DataPA natively to access the information you may have exposed via those service objects to Rollbase or your OE mobile applications. So the way you access data through OE Service Objects is by using a business entity, and that's based around a temp table or a database definition. So in this case, we've got a temp table TT customer, which we've defined with our code information to make sure the schema information is passed. So that's there and ready. So now we can create our business entity by selecting business entity, and it takes us through a wizard to build that. So first of all, we give it a name, which would be in this case customer, and then we select the temp table file, which is an include file that contains the definitions that we want to access. So there's our customer TT customer temp table. So now it generates for us a class, and that class has certain methods. So if we expand the methods, we can see it has a create, a delete, an update, and a read customers. So basically, looking at the read customers, this is what we need really to use to build that temp table. So we can see it's got an input of a filter, an output of a TT customer, and then it's got any code we want to use to build up that temp table. And the important part is that it outputs that temp table in its parameters. Now there's some tags in there against this method which allow it to be exposed via REST and used in an OE service object. Now you can also do the same in just standard Progress GUI. So I have a class here available to me. We have a property which defines a minimum balance amount. We have a query and dataset definitions there within the class, and in our constructor we're preparing that dataset. Now in our method which actually gets the data, what we're doing there is we're taking the property value from the balance, opening the query, building the dataset, and then returning that dataset back. So in order to use that from DataPA, we need to wrap it up in a function. So that function can have whatever parameters you want. So in this case, we might want to pass that minimum balance as the parameter, and then use that on the class to set that particular property. So there's our input parameter of minimum balance. Then we need to define an instance of our class, which in this case is customer obj, and then we create that class. We set the property to control the filter of the minimum balance, and then we call the method to actually open the dataset, tidy the class up, and then return the first temp table in that dataset back as the result of the query. Now that function is in a library, and in order to make that accessible to the app server, we need to run that library persistently and then add it to the session super procedure stack. So this is a standard way you would have accessed business logic through DataPA when just using standard functions. Now against the app server, the actual startup procedure needs to be set in the advanced settings there against the startup procedure. So now that's all set up and is up and running, what we can do now is actually build a subject that's based on that particular function and class. So we go into the analytics engine. Now it's our big sports system that we're using here. So what we'll do is we'll create a new subject. We'll give it a name, which customers would make sense. Customers from class, so we know that it's distinct from maybe a free-form subject which accesses customers. System is big sports, and we're going to select a business logic subject. So we'll see a list of any functions that are running on the app server there. We only have one. Then we can choose what we want to do with those parameter values. So we have one parameter value, which is the minimum balance. So we'll give it a label which reflects that, and also give it a help message which prompts the user what to do. We can make it mandatory, so the user has to enter a value in order to run a query based on this subject. So having run a test run of that, we now have the schema back, and we can see it's the same fields that we defined in that include file. We're going to include all the fields in the subject, and we can make any changes in the attributes screen, but that's basically it set up. and we save that so we can then go on and use it. So if we create a new dashboard, first thing that happens is it pops up the query wizard to help us get some data for the dashboard. So we'll call this query customers with high balance. We'll select the system, which is big sports, and then the subject, which is our brand new one that we just created from the class. We can filter the data if we want here further, but we'll just take all the fields and we'll leave the sort just as the default. So what's happened now is DataPA detected that we had a required field, so it's added a control panel and a fill-in field to allow us to enter this minimum balance. So if we make that 1000, the query runs automatically, and in our temp table result down here we can see we do indeed have customers with balance greater than 100, so we're happy with that, now ready to start designing our dashboard. So we drag on a 2D column chart, and what we might want to show in here is maybe our sales rep. On change of sales rep, show us a sum of the balance, so we can see the total for each sales rep, total outstanding for each sales rep, and we'll sort that by balance descending, so we see the sales rep with the biggest balance first on the chart. So we resize that, and then if we want to change that minimum balance value at any point, we just change the value maybe to 2000. It refreshes the query and updates the chart. So that shows you how you can actually quite easily reuse business logic you've already got on your app server that you might be using for Rollbase or for OE Mobile, and reuse that from DataPA to allow you to have that as a data source and build dashboards from that.